Women in the United States spend 37% more time doing unpaid care work compared to men. That's about 95 extra 8-hour workdays each year for no pay, according to a 2020 report. A 2018 report found that US women do about 94 extra minutes of unpaid labor per day. This is a pattern that holds true even among younger generations, even in households where women are the financial breadwinners, and even in households where men are unemployed.
I must have missed 60 minutes. What are you saying?
Wow, well, that's one heck of a stat, but let's go ahead and break that down for a second, shall we? You're claiming that women do a whole bunch of unpaid labor, which I'm assuming is cooking, laundry, and general cleaning. Now, let's say for the sake of argument that you do receive financial compensation for the labor-intensive tasks of pushing a button on the washing machine or flipping a slice of meat on a stove until it's overcooked, dry, and utterly tasteless, much like your personality. And there's no need to include bedroom fun in that list because, well, let's face it, that bedroom is deader than Tiger Electronic video games. What would be fair compensation for every time you put a plate in the dishwasher? And what about whenever you spray some cleaner on a window and spend 30 seconds wiping it down? How much should you be compensated for that? Let me answer that question for you. It doesn't matter. No matter how much money is offered for your hard work of pushing buttons and wiping everything down except your husband, you will be incredibly offended because the number is far too low. Which just goes to show that the unpaid labor argument is just an excuse for you to be miserable and to treat everyone else like dirt so you can feel like a victim.
The unpaid labor typically done by men, like car upkeep and yard work, is typically less frequent and less time-consuming overall, whereas labor done by women, like cleaning and cooking and caretaking, is extremely time-intensive and happens daily, if not multiple times per day. And when you add paid and unpaid labor together, women are working longer hours and for less pay on average.
Man, that's just mean. That's mean, man.
Am I the only one that's bothered by this idea that a mother who considers raising her own children to be unpaid labor? It's gotta be one of the most resentful things you can do to your own flesh and blood. A father generally doesn't do that. A good dad does his job and raises his children without complaint or demand of compensation because that ultimately makes no sense. But you're saying that all the husband does is mow the lawn and take care of the car. Okay, so we're not going to take into consideration the unpaid time he spends providing round-the-clock security for you and your spawn. We're not submitting any forms of mileage that he uses for driving you around town for shopping and whatever other quote-unquote meaningless errands you have to run. And because everything he builds and moves around in that house is technically non-union labor, he doesn't get compensated for that either. It's awfully convenient that you can openly disregard the physical and mental toll a man pays for taking care of his family as nothing compared to the 90 seconds you spent scrubbing the toilet.
For so long in the United States, we've framed gender equity, especially when it comes to pay, as something that can be resolved in the workplace if women just lean in and negotiate and max out those 401ks. But attitudes around gender equity have to extend beyond the workplace, into the home, for example, if we want to make real meaningful progress on these measures. So when we talk about things like closing the pay gap or closing the wealth gap or closing the leadership gap, we have to talk about the context in which those things actually exist. That includes the valuation and distribution of unpaid labor as much as it does paid labor.
What?
All right, fine, you got it. Your husband is now paying you for the quote-unquote labor that you do. It's an ample sum that you both agree is fair. Now, you're receiving income for your unpaid labor. Now, let's go ahead and fast forward a year. The Internal Revenue Service is going to want to know where all of that extra money came from. Now, the second you tell them you got it because you won a victory for unpaid gender equity in the home, they're going to congratulate you as they hand you documentation demanding that you owe them a substantial cut because of your employment with your husband will officially be considered taxable income. And if you don't pay up, you'll get hit with an audit. You didn't honestly think you'd be able to get away with getting paid to do virtually nothing and not have a tax branch of the federal government find out, did you? Oh wait, that's right. You're a modern housewife. You're incapable of thinking in the first place.
You didn't think it was going to be that easy, did you? You know, for a second there? Yeah, I kind of did.
Hey babe, just your daily reminder that just because a relationship has lasted a very long time, it doesn't mean that it's working. And I think that it's very important to remember that you will never regret being single. However, you will regret staying in a relationship that no longer serves you. Happy Sunday.
Well, that's an oddly specific reminder to be giving out to women. And it's terrible advice, especially when you take into account a modern woman's borderline offensive reliance on happiness being the #1 baseline for whether or not a relationship is working. At that point, you're not dedicating yourself to a monogamous relationship, you're using monkey branching as an excuse to chase the happiness dragon. Long-term relationships are about trust and contentment, not being madly in love every day. But this message makes even less sense when you decided to post this message of such importance that you didn't have time to put on a shirt before telling your hive-minded cultists to break up with their boyfriends for virtually no reason.
We'll put some clothes on.
Guys, I don't want to alarm anyone. I don't know if this is because I'm on my period and I was listening to Climb Every Mountain earlier and it was like making me emotional. But I literally just started crying again because I matched with someone on... I could probably actually make this into a TikTok. I matched with someone on Bumble and their interest said go-karting. Like,
My God, that's so simple and awesome.
So you matched with a guy who loves to go go-karting? Lady, I don't think you realize what kind of a catch that is. Go-karting is freaking awesome. It's a merging of man and machine and allows him to be able to release his competitive prowess in a controlled environment. Not to mention, some of those go-karts go crazy fast. I was once in a massive go-kart endurance grudge match with 10 other dudes over at Skeeter's house, and I spun out and totally got T-boned by a go-kart going like 17 miles an hour. I may have ended in last place, but the brotherhood we shared that evening will always win the gold medal in my book. Modern women will always look at a man's hobbies as if they're immature, like a man should act their age. Just look at the modern women, who are so mature that the second something goes wrong on a dating app, their first reaction is to start bawling and posting a video on TikTok complaining about how men are the immature ones.
I deleted the apps because I was like, screw this, like, it's just a barren wasteland. But then I was like, you know what, let me re-download Raya because I'm paying $20, so I might as well, if I'm giving them my well-earned income for it. And then I re-downloaded Bumble as well. Hinge is gone. Hinge is down 6 feet under and is never coming back. Maybe with the next time Jesus rises from the dead is when I'll re-download Hinge.
Blasphemer!
And who exactly is to blame for the death of dating apps, woman? Well, I assure you, it wasn't the average men who were just looking for relationships. For years, men on these apps were looking for legitimate connections, but what turned out to be a mildly good idea on paper quickly exploded into a dopamine beer tap for modern women, and you quickly grew addicted to the validation. Just look what happened to you after you deleted the apps. You were jonesing for a fix so badly that you were willing to flush $20 a month down the toilet on a dating app just for the chance that Blake Chadman, Private Eye, will send you a DM and see if you're up for some stinky fun time. We ditched the apps a long time ago because there wasn't any point. If we want to be ignored by women, we could just go for a walk outside. There's plenty of other apps that are sending us meaningless notifications and tracking our data. We don't need another app on our phones to do that for us.
But I re-downloaded Raya and then I re-downloaded Bumble. And I liked this guy, he's like kind of cute, I don't know, but then there's always something. And even the guys that have immaculate profiles are the ones that like will never talk to you. And then I was like, oh, he's kind of cute. And then I saw that he likes go-kart. Like, I don't want to go go-karting. Go-karting? Go-karting? What kind of interest is that? Go-karting? Like, in the year of our Lord, 2023, almost 24? Like, oh my,
Nobody cares what you think.
So then, what exactly would be an acceptable hobby, woman? You seem to be the expert. What kind of thing should a grown man be doing with his time? From the sounds of it, nothing will ever work. Go-karting is fast, exciting, and fun, but apparently that's just for kids. You're the type of woman who thinks golf is boring, video games are toxic, and reading books are for nerds. And if he's into fashion, romantic comedies, and having nervous breakdowns on TikTok, then he's not masculine enough for you. At this point, you're just looking for excuses to be alone. You're a woman on a dating app. Regardless of your situation, you're going to be getting a minimum of 20 times more attention from the men who are stupid enough to still have a login and password, but you're too busy shooting them down because they don't meet the invisible list of impossible standards. And self-respecting men couldn't care less. We're too busy go-karting.
Wish I could stay, but I got a thing. Bye. It doesn't have to be horrible for you to justify why you want to leave. A lot of my life was in a pretty good place. I had a great career that I was thriving in. I had friends. I took care of myself. My kids were doing okay. But I was not happy in my marriage. And I want to speak to the woman who is married to a good guy. He's a good provider. He's a good dad. He does what he's told. But you're not happy.
That's not my problem. It's yours.
Oh, that is where you're wrong, sister. Things should be horrible for you to justify leaving, but your good man wasn't horrible to you. The problem was that you didn't have it within you to respect this man. You said it yourself. This was a husband who did what he was told, which means that you didn't trust him to lead. So instead, you took the reins from him and openly disrespected him every chance you could. And even though this man clearly had every intention of honoring his vows to you, I guess the same couldn't be said for you. After all, when a modern woman says from death till us part, what she really means, until I feel unhappy and feel the need to straddle a private eye.
It took me a long time for me to finally be honest with myself that it didn't matter that he was a good guy. You do not need to be in an abusive, awful, horrible relationship for you to justify why you want to choose yourself and to justify leaving. I know it is brutally hard. It is brutally hard. And I had to find support in order for me to ultimately file for divorce and move on with my life.
You! I will think of you as I throw up into the toilet.
Oh, please. Your decision to completely destroy your husband, break up your family, and upend their lives wasn't a difficult decision. It was rather easy. You just like to pretend that it's hard because you're over the age of 50, and men want nothing to do with you, and that sympathy you get off social media is the only lifeblood you have left in that meaningless husk you call a life. And you have some nerve to initiate the divorce and say that you were the one that needed the support. You said it yourself. Your husband did absolutely nothing wrong, but that didn't stop you from resenting the poor guy whose only crime was settling for an ungrateful harlot.
The first thing I'm going to encourage you to do if you are in a situation like I was in is to download my free journal and start to get in touch with yourself and to start to have an honest conversation with you. This is where it all begins. Once I did this, and once I really started to look in the mirror and tell myself the truth, I was able to make some very empowered changes. And 3 years later, my life is unrecognizable to where it was before. Download my free journal. Reach out to me for a free consult if you need some support. It's not easy to make these changes and to choose yourself. But if you don't do it now, when are you going to do it?
No.
So your advice to other women who might be unsatisfied with their lives is to ruin the lives of everyone around them so they can live alone with 3 or 4 cats and a cupboard full of wine, huh? Well, I can't say I'm all that surprised. You're a modern divorcee. That's all you're good for. It's actually kind of disgusting how the institution of marriage, which was the bedrock for a stable family, has now become a twisted joke that benefits women and completely destroys men. Think about it. A woman gets engaged. She gets a shiny ring as well as all sorts of attention from friends and family. She gets a bridal shower with all sorts of presents, not to mention the wedding, the honeymoon, a house, and all other sorts of goodies. She'll eventually get preggers and pop out a couple of babies, and before they turn 18, she'll cook up a little excuse to feel a little down so she can file for divorce and the court will side with her, giving her all sorts of alimony, child support, not to mention the unwarranted amount of attention and validation she gets from the boss bae Yas queens on social media. But look where it gets you in the end, woman. Your life is unrecognizable. You're clearly miserable and still trying to justify your terrible decision to the entire internet. Well, guess what, sister? You made a terrible decision, and there's no amount of impassioned speeches that will ever change that. And that's gonna do it for today's video, gentlemen and gents. And as always, if you find that my particular brand of comedy is bringing you to the brink of laughter, then why don't you scroll on down and click that like and subscribe button, ring the notification bell, leave a couple of comments, and share this video so we can give the good old-fashioned middle finger to the YouTube algorithm. Thank you so much for checking out the new video, and until next time, peace out, homies.